Good morning. I'm Jim Monaghan, and welcome to the Jersey Magazine this morning. My guest on the Jersey Magazine is actually a Jersey girl who grew up originally in Sussex County, went to the University of Connecticut for her undergraduate, came back to New Jersey, got her doctorate in physical therapy. Dr. Chelsea Barnes, good morning and welcome to WDHA.
Good morning. How's it going?
Good. I had found you on Instagram a few weeks ago, and I was looking at some of the videos that you did, and specifically some of the self-body weight exercises that you do, which I absolutely love. Can you talk about the importance of self-body weight exercises and maybe compare it to, versus weights?
Yeah. So, any type of strength training is obviously something I'm a huge fan of. Like as a doctor of physical therapy, I spend a lot of time researching everything like that. So I think the common misconception with strength training is that a lot of people feel that they have to jump right into heavy weights when they think strength training. They think lifting weights, being in the gym, etc. But there's a ton of functional activities. You don't even have to use any weights. Just body weight stuff, resistance bands. I love. You don't have to be in a gym. You can do a lot of this stuff at home. I have a lot of my clients start there and perfect their form with things like planking, core stability, perfect squatting form. If you can't perfect your form without any weight, then you really don't have to go ahead and dive into too much weight. I'm a big fan, like I said, of resistance bands because physics wise, as opposed to weights where say you're doing a bicep curl, you're really only getting the force of the weight when you're slowly lowering it. As opposed to using a band, you're going to get resistance through the whole arc of motion. So you get a lot more feedback in your joints and your muscles.
As I had mentioned to you off the air, I do a lot of work with young baseball players. And for example, this past summer, I had 9-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and 16-year-olds. And we do a lot, especially our dynamic warm-up. We do a lot of stuff with the Jaeger resistance bands. As the kids start to get a little older, especially as they get into middle school, the race to puberty starts. And, when do I start lifting weights, coach? I want to throw harder. I want to throw faster. What do I need to do? And I find, I really have to slow them down a little bit. In your opinion, what's a good age? Is there a good age for a child to start lifting weights?
This is a very controversial topic in research. I've read a lot of research on this and it's kind of mixed opinions, but I guess my personal opinion is that any age is okay to use weights as long as the weight is appropriate for the body type. So if you're 10 years old and you weigh X amount, should you be lifting more than your body weight or something 90%, 80% of your body weight? Maybe not, probably not. And that is the same for someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s. It's probably very challenging, but you can always add in some weights or some resistance training really at any age, as long as it's appropriate. So some of I have 8, 9, 10-year-olds that are doing some even baseball rehab, elbow rehab, pitchers, soccer players with, ankle sprains, knee sprains, and I'll give them some weights, but comparable to their age and their body type and what their strength level is. So, a 2 or 3 pound weight. It doesn't have to be, 10, 15, 20 pound weight. You can get a lot of muscle endurance by just using a light weight, as opposed to, anything too crazy where you're going to have a high risk of injury.
Yeah, and again, I'm a huge believer in resistance bands. In fact, I use them a lot, and I'm going to ask you a little bit later on about your 6-part movement screen test. I actually passed one of them.
Yay!
and I attribute that to resistance bands. We'll get into that in a little bit. My guest this morning here on the Jersey Magazine is Dr. Chelsea Barnes here at 105.5 WDHA. The fitness industry took a huge hit with gymnasiums, what have you, closing physical fitness centers. How was it for you to pivot from that into going virtual?
Yeah, so I have for the past few years worked at a large corporate company doing outpatient physical therapy. I want to say, I worked full time the whole time, but during the months of like last April, May, and June, naturally, we had a huge lull in caseload. There were no elective surgeries, which naturally is something I do a lot of knee replacements, hip replacements, ACL surgery. Yep, raising your hand there. So they had been postponed, as well as sports. So my other large population is working with young athletes. And naturally they were not competing, or were they in school? So big delay in training and rehab. But what I started doing was, just kind of volunteering really on my own time with patients I had previously been working with. I hopped on some Zoom calls with them, similar to what we're doing now. And as a PT, I definitely had a learning curve because I'm really used to touching, using my hands, explaining, demonstrating, showing, giving cues. But besides the learning curve of having to use my words, it was really beneficial. I can still do, pretty much the same assessment and give the same feedback. And yes, you have to turn the computer and get the phone and do the angles, but I can record the Zooms. I can pause the screen. I can draw on, people squatting and being like, your knees are bowing in, your hip is rotated way too far out, and really still give that feedback. And I can also still demonstrate, they can see me, I can see them. And so when I saw that people were actually doing really well with it, I was like, I could probably do this like full time. Naturally, I wasn't going to be working with any of the same patients because they were still receiving outpatient PT. But when they were ready to discharge, or with a different group of family and friends, that's kind of who I started working with, doing one-on-one virtual stuff. And it has been really beneficial.
How difficult is it to make a correction if you see somebody doing something incorrect? Like you said, hands-on, you can move a body part. How difficult is it doing a virtual?
So definitely difficult, but actually I really think it's more beneficial for the patient. So I now have learned that a lot of times I'm just, when I'm in person, using my hands and like tilting their hips or moving their toe out, and I'm manually correcting them. So naturally they move better and they correct their form. But when I have to use my words or explain it to them, like, take your fingers, put your hands on your low back. Can you feel your muscle? Does it feel tight, or does it feel like Jello? If it feels really tight, you're overactivating. Go ahead and tuck your hips down and it should feel really relaxed. When it's relaxed, now you're in optimal form. Go ahead and keep that position. So I'm like explaining it a lot better to them, where then I've seen the carryover be a lot better because they're not relying on me to fix them. They have to do it. And there's no soft tissue work. There's no heat. There's no ice. It's like, you're coming to like learn exercise. You have to invest and you have to do your homework. And all of my clients are doing really, really well. It's been really good.
Speaking of homework, Dr. Chelsea Barnes has this 6-part movement screen that I downloaded the other day. And I tried a few of these. And as I mentioned, with the resistance bands, the shoulder mobility one, I nailed it. I was right there with it. I do a lot of throwing. I do a lot of resistance band work. The hip mobility, I'm not sure if I got it or not. Probably didn't. The hip stability, I could feel one of the hips dropping as I would lift up,
Probably your right leg, which needed to have replaced.
My right.
Yeah. So your right glute is probably maybe a little weaker if you lift up, if you stand on the left. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm left-handed. So, like for pitching, for example, it would be my right knee that would come up, but I do the exercise on both sides because I work with a lot of right-handed pitchers and what have you. So I always like to show them what they should be doing. The one that I really failed, and I failed it magnificently, Chelsea, was the ankle mobility. That was just an absolute mess.
And that's a root to all evil. So a lot of people that have chronic knee pain or hip pain, a lot of, personal trainers, coaches, PTs, et cetera, the script comes in for knee pain. We look at the knee, but oftentimes that's not the problem. It's that they have either the joint above the hip or the joint below the ankle have some sort of movement restriction, and the knee therefore takes a lot of the force. So I worked with a ton of athletes that have had knee or hip pain, and I do that quick ankle screen, just bringing keeping your foot down, bring your knee against the wall. Can you keep your heel flat? Like 8 out of 10 of them probably can. And then I'm like, wow, the problem here is you don't have enough ankle mobility. So when you're squatting really deep, if your heels can't stay on the ground, or if you can't change your form, where's the force going to go? It's going to go into your knees, or it's going to go somewhere if you're not distributing your weight evenly amongst your joints. And then that is typically, like, some people, their knees kill them, but their knees are fine. Their motion is fine. Their strength is fine. And then I end up targeting a lot more hip mobility and ankle mobility. And that's really the fine tuning in their program.
As I was trying to do the ankle mobility, and I'm unable to keep my heel on the floor as I'm trying to get my knee to the wall. I'm thinking, well, it's because I have short legs.
Yeah. And my total disclaimer with my movement screen, so it's totally free. You just enter your email on my website to get it. And then if you sign up, then I obviously send a follow-up email. And my total disclaimer is I do not pass all 6 of those tests. I also have very tight hips, hip flexors, and my quads are really tight, which I contribute to playing soccer for so many years. But the screen is really nice because those are just 6 of the most common things I do, pretty much head to toe. And then it gives you an idea of what to work on. So for you, maybe working on ankle mobility, for me, working on hip mobility, someone else focusing on shoulder mobility. You might not even realize you're restricted in an area, but it's a good place to hone in and target those restrictions.
You mentioned your website. That website, by the way, is Dr. Chelsea Barnes, or it's DR, I should say, drchelseabarnespt.com. One of the things that you have on your website, as a matter of fact, is an online course, Get Your Back on Track. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah. So once I started doing this virtual business, and it was going so well, I naturally am starting to cap out with the amount of one-on-one clients I could work with per week. There's only so many hours in a day, and one-on-one is amazing, but it's limiting. So I, put a lot of thought into this. I'm like, how can I reach more people, as many people as possible without having to put so much, time up front into it. So I was like, what, maybe I can film this course. So there's a strong variety of things that I focus on during my programs, whether you have back pain, knee pain, hip pain, shoulder pain. I do a lot of core strength, a lot of stability, a lot of mobility, a lot of postural control. And that's pretty well-rounded because I'm really always looking at the big picture. Even if you come to me for knee pain, like I said, I don't care. I'm looking at your ankle, I'm looking at your hip, I'm looking at your back, I'm looking at your neck. I mean, everything works. We're all connected. Everything's elbows connected to the, So it's, with my one-on-ones, I do a lot. I have my programming, I have a lot of these repetitive activities that I'm doing. And it could be something simple like a hamstring stretch or a hip flexor stretch, but I give cues, PT-based cues to like tuck your pelvis and like don't arch forward. And it's really joint friendly. And it's really a great way to optimize your body mechanics, as opposed to just going to the gym and following an exercise program and not really knowing what to do or where to start. So with this program, I had a videographer. I put a lot of time into this, had a videographer come, I prepped all these videos. They're all instructional. There's over 25 videos of me demonstrating exercises, like I said, where to feel it, how to like palpate your muscles, see if you're in the right positioning, how to use a wall for feedback. There's no equipment at all. It focuses on, the primary causes is back pain naturally. So of course there's back mobility, like low back mobility, but there's thoracic spine mobility, shoulder mobility, pec stretches, hamstring stretches, hip stuff. I mean, it's jam-packed with a ton of stuff for literally a fraction of the cost of working with me one-on-one. And obviously you're not getting the feedback for one-on-one, but it's a great starting point for people that kind of like had back pain. They tried PT, they tried working out, but it's kind of comes and goes and they haven't really honed in on anything too specific. So it's a great like coaching program to kind of get started. And then, like I said, if people do it and want to work with me, then perfect. That's a great starting point. And then we can build on that. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Dr. Chelsea Barnes, my guest this morning here at 105.5 WDHA on the Jersey Magazine. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, Chelsea, is the Run to Home Base that's coming up on Saturday at Fenway Park. And while that's a Boston event, obviously, it is a national charity that you can donate. How many times have you run this before?
So this will be my 3rd year. This is only my 2nd year in person because last year's was virtual, which really takes the fun out of the program because the really cool part is that you literally get to land on home plate at Fenway Park. That is the finish line. It is a fundraiser for the Home Base program, which is a Red Sox Foundation program. Of course, this is the New Jersey network, so maybe not a ton of Red Sox fans, but if you're a baseball fan or a nice person, then you'll think that this is a great fundraiser because it is. And great program. A lot of veterans get up there and they speak about their stories. The fundraiser goes to donating to veterans, service members, and their families, all about treating their invisible wounds. So it's a lot of mental health coaching, other therapy services, dealing with them, helping them come back and readjust basically to society. So the program is amazing, and it's such a great thing to run for. And hopefully it's not too hot on Saturday, because it's 10K, 9K. It's a 9K. So it's about 6 miles.
If I'm not mistaken, one of the generals involved in the program, by the way, has New Jersey roots, as do you. The details on that, by the way, are at runtohomebase.org. I don't think I mentioned this to you. You were talking about Boston and New Jersey. I'm actually a huge Red Sox fan.
Okay.
Even though I'm originally from New York City. Years ago, my dad, coming out of high school, was scouted by the Red Sox. They had a farm team he grew up in the Poconos, and they had a farm team up in Scranton, that area. So I guess maybe I heard a lot about the Red Sox growing up. And I don't know if our listeners have made the connection yet between your name, Barnes, and the Red Sox. Matt Barnes is Chelsea's husband. But I would be remiss if I did not point out that over your right shoulder is a Derek Jeter jersey. Now, what's that about?
So if I can give you a little sneak, we have so many. The whole basement is stacked here. So my husband, huge Derek Jeter fan. Yes, plays for the Red Sox. Don't worry, I got a David Ortiz one right here too. Don't forget. It's just not the best camera angle. We got a World Series jersey, Futures game jersey, Team USA. We got all Eli Manning even.
Yep, saw that as well.
Yes, we got it all. We just respect good baseball. He just recently, I think upstairs, he has like 10 jerseys that he wants to get framed too. I think we got a Mike Trout. I don't even know what else we have up there. Ohtani. We got the good stuff.
Yeah. Mike Trout, speaking of jersey guys, I can't think of a more bizarre baseball season than what we've seen right now. I mean, you thought 2020 was crazy. Yeah. Chelsea, this is probably the single most bizarre baseball season I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Between COVID and all these different things that are happening in baseball, it's been crazy. How has it been for the two of you to navigate through it?
First off, excited that there is a season and that he is able to travel. In 2020, naturally, they were basically stuck playing the same small group of teams in a small central bubble. We were not allowed to go to the games, nor was I allowed to really see my husband really at all. And so it's been nice that at least there's some consistency with traveling. Definitely a lot of restrictions and protocols and rules to follow, but hopefully this will be the last year of this, and then next year it'll be to normal, whatever normal even is in baseball world.
Yeah, who knows what normal is. Once again, for listeners who are interested, Chelsea's website is drchelseabarnespt.com. And I also urge that you follow her on Instagram. And again, that is drchelseabarnespt. Thank you so much for your time here. This has been wonderful chatting with you on the Jersey Magazine.
Of course. Thank you for having me.